Mr. Speaker, during consideration of this resolution, all time yielded is for the purpose of debate only. I yield the customary 30 minutes to my friend, the gentleman from Florida, Mr. Hastings, pending which I shall yield myself such time as I may consume.
Gentleman's recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that all members have 5 legislative days to revise and extend their remarks.
Without objection.
Mr. Speaker, on Tuesday, just yesterday, the Rules Committee met and reported a House Resolution 595, providing for consideration of an important piece of legislation, H.R. 2936, the Resilient Federal Forest Act of 2017. The rule provides for consideration of H.R. 2936 under a structured rule with 4 Democratic amendments made in order, 2 bipartisan amendments, and 1 Republican-led amendment made in order. Mr. Speaker, this rule provides for consideration of H.R. 2936, the Resilient Federal Forest Act of 2017, a bill that is critically important to my district in central Washington state and to rural forested districts like it across the United States who continue to face devastation from catastrophic wildfires, as we've seen just this last year, a great example of. This bipartisan, comprehensive legislation is aimed at addressing the disastrous consequences of wildfires by utilizing the tools the Forest Service and other agencies have to reduce the threats posed by these wildfires, by insects, by disease infestation, and dangerous old forest overgrowth that serves as a literal tinderbox for wildfires. This legislation will expedite and improve forest management activities in federal forests to counteract these threats. This legislation, spearheaded by my friend and colleague from Arkansas, Representative Bruce Westerman, who is a trained forester himself, is comprised of a truly comprehensive effort developed here in the People's House. It's bipartisan. This bipartisan support demonstrates that the threat of catastrophic wildfires does not just impact a red or a blue district, but rather poses a threat to communities across the United States. H.R. 2936 would provide federal land management agencies immediate tools to increase the pace and the scale of forest management projects, to dramatically improve the health and resiliency of our national forests, ensuring robust protection of the environment. Active management leads to healthier forests. It's that simple. This legislation will also allow expedited review for collaborative projects in federal forests and removes incentives for special interest groups to file frivolous lawsuits. By requiring litigants opposing active management projects to propose an alternative management option, we can instill accountability into a system that is wrought with litigation. Additionally, the legislation bolsters locally led forest management and hazardous fuel reduction projects to improve forest health. By engaging local stakeholders, we can lessen the severity and the costs of wildfires while protecting the communities and the environment. Mr. Speaker, another major component of our nation's wildfire crisis is the broken system with which we fund firefighting suppression. When these firefighting costs exceed the existing budget, the U.S. Forest Service transfers funds from other vital forest management program accounts in order to pay for wildfire suppression. I and a lot of other people in this chamber have been outspoken critics of this dangerous, broken cycle known as fire borrowing. That also is a very bipartisan position that is taken. H.R. 2936 provides a major step forward in ending this cycle by rating accounts that provide for forest management programs which help prevent wildfires, we tie one hand behind our backs in an effort to both prevent and suppress these catastrophic wildfires. So this legislation will help to put an end to this long-standing problem. Mr. Speaker, my constituents know as well as anyone the immense threat that wildfires pose to local communities. In just the past 4 years, the 4th district of my state, my district, has seen the 2 largest fires in Washington State's history. We've lost hundreds of homes and businesses and structures. My constituents are still struggling to recover from the Carlton Complex fire of 2014 and the Okanagan Complex fire of 2015. We lost 3 firefighters that year. That truly is a high cost. Active forest management is a matter of saving lives and livelihoods, of protecting our communities, and ensuring our constituents' health and safety, which is why I am proud to support this rule and the underlying legislation that it represents today. Mr. Speaker, as I've often said, we cannot continue to limp from one devastating fire season to the next. We must take significant steps toward reforestation, rehabilitation, and overall forest management. This legislation will allow us to do just that. We must begin to prevent, to suppress, to mitigate the threat of catastrophic wildfires. And the Resilient Federal Forest Act of 2017 will be a momentous opportunity to turn around our diseased and our overgrown federal forests. This legislation is essential and desperately needed to change the current path of forest management on public lands. It's outdated, unsustainable, and dangerous. So, Mr. Speaker, this is a straightforward rule allowing for consideration of this critical piece of legislation that will help protect our rural communities and ensure that we are prepared to respond to devastating and catastrophic wildfires that have plagued many areas of our country the last few years. I support the rule's adoption. I urge my colleagues to support both the rule and the underlying bill. But before I yield to my colleague from Florida, Mr. Speaker, I'd like to share one last note. Just a few weeks ago, the new chief of the U.S. Forest Service, Tony Took, came to Capitol Hill and briefed some of my colleagues, me included, regarding this year's devastating wildfire season. He reported to us that over 8 million acres just this year have burned. We've also lost dozens of lives, thousands of homes. Chief Took left us with the stark fact that while more than 8 million acres burned this year, another 80 million acres across the United States are at a high risk of catching fire. 80 million acres. So, Mr. Speaker, if that does not demonstrate, does not show how dire that this problem is, then I certainly can't tell you what does. And with that, Mr. Speaker, I reserve the balance of my time.